Oh, hi. Today I am going to. Oh, by the way, this is my Zen Brain book report Life with a Traumatic Brain Injury by Amy Zellmer. Amy has published two books, I believe. I think the second one is called Faces of TBI. I have to double check that, but Amy is very. I don't know, she's kind of an inspiration in a way to me because she has turned her self advocacy into a presence in a lot of ways on Facebook and in her yoga videos, and she holds an annual, I think, seminar. But she is kind of one of the people that I seek to emulate because, like I said, she has, uh, it says right here on the cover, finalist for the Midwest Book Award. And so she is I don't know, she's a very brave person. I think anybody that goes into life with a traumatic brain injury and manages to somehow muster their bravery and uh, greet most days with a positive attitude deserves our praise and respect. So, Amy, I offer those things to you. I personally, most of the time, try to distance myself from my TBI, mostly because I don't want special treatment. I don't want to admit to myself that this thing I endured affected me drastically and for the rest of my life. And then I read an article or I see a TED talk or I read a book about the brain and what happens when it's wounded, and that the after effects are so real and so apparent to the TBI survivor, and the people around us have no idea. And that's one of the reasons why Amy's book was so inspiring to me. She dedicates her book in part to her TBI tribe, her Facebook support group that she started herself and whose membership totals over 10,000 people right now. That number itself is kind of flooring. That's 10,000 people more who have had, are related to, or are the caregiver for a TBI survivor. And I'm one of those people. Oh, I'm sorry, a brain injury survivor. I just remembered my conversation with Richard not too long ago, uh, in which he expressed the desire that traumatic brain injury and acquired brain injury, those titles go kind of by the wayside because, for the purposes of social acceptance and policy at the legislative level, uh, brain injury is sufficient, because brain injury, it doesn't need to be a traumatic brain injury, which is it happened because of outside forces, and it doesn't need to be an acquired brain injury because of internal forces, as mine was and Richard's was. It's just a brain injury, and sometimes the easy ones, the not so serious ones, end up giving people lifelong conditions that they have to deal with, and sometimes people sustain multiple hundreds, thousands of brain injuries over time, and they might suffer CTE, but it's anybody's guess. Nobody really knows. So anyway, I'm one of those people, and I actually had an episode recently that prompted me to seek out the counsel of other members of Amy's group on Facebook, and I got some valuable pointers and advice and a virtual hug from many people. And as many survivors will tell you, a virtual hug is better than no hug. Just knowing that in Texas or Washington or wherever that there is someone who knows exactly what I'm going through, and I know it's because they understand exactly how I ended up here. it provides solace for people who've been dismissed by others as overdramatic or crazy or whining, or just dismissed in general, or just dismissed because people don't have the time or want to be troubled with the concerns of their loved ones who has suffered a brain injury and is dealing with the effects of it for the rest of their lives. And some people, that's not their bag. Anyway, but as Amy points out, for whatever reason, whether it's a TBI or an ABI or a brain injury or whatever, our brains no longer work the same, and we have cognitive deficiencies that don't make sense even to us. Um, Page 21 of the story or out of her book was about her being at a restaurant that had TVs blaring, and every TV was on a different channel, and people were chattering, and the sheer cacophony of the situation. I love the word cacophony. I love it. I love it that I remember how to use it. It's small victories like this that give me excited. Um, and her sensory nervous system, because of this cacophony of people and channels and TVs and all that, it reduced her. It sent her into sensory nervous system overload. She upshifted into fifth gear, and the clock started ticking on her eventual departure. And I may as well have written that paragraph myself because it's exactly what happened to me. The only time I tried to weather one of those sports bars environments, and I made it about 90 minutes before I was out of there. And the worst part of it was that I didn't realize or didn't really want to admit that it was the TBI that made the whole situation just completely intolerable. Amy writes, quote, "My friends don't see that part. They don't understand what it's like. This is what caused me feel causes us to feel isolated and alone. The invisible aspect of what we deal with on a daily basis is a lonely struggle." Um, of the Facebook support group, she shares that what they don't realize how they helped me heal, and also to understand that I am not alone in this journey. And I want to thank Amy for the tribe for doing the same thing for me recently when I was creeping my way out of a pretty deep pothole. Ms. Zellmer also touches on the topics of fear, depression, chronic pain, and other issues that the TBI survivor faces. Hold on, I just lost my place. Um, she touches on the lack of knowledge in the medical community about traumatic brain injury, a field that is improving over time. Certainly, in the last 20 years, when people started realizing um, the effects of having a brain injury, and it's expanded in leaps and bounds every year. Ms. Zellmer tells the story of going to the National Brain Injury Awareness Day in D.C. and meeting with Al Franken, the senator from Minnesota at the time, as well as meeting folks from Brainline, the online magazine for TBI survivors. Ms. Zellmer was first to notice for her self advocacy as a TBI survivor from blog posts she published. I don't know what that sentence means. She was the first to put out there into the world her experience as a TBI survivor, and she published it on the Huffington Post. And one of the more notable articles was 5 things every TBI survivor wants you to understand. So I definitely recommend, if you are a family member or a caregiver of a TBI survivor, to look that up. Huffington Post, Amy Zellmer, 5 things every TBI survivor wants you to understand. Amy goes on to describe her life post TBI and the necessity for TBI survivors to advocate for themselves. What I'm doing now. yet also being aware of our limitations. I can certainly relate to that because nothing is more frustrating than knowing there's 9 things on your to do list that needed to be tended to, and knowing full well that it's going to take you a week to accomplish 3 of them because of fatigue and neurofatigue and tending the needs of your body as well as your mind. Otherwise, this train can go off the tracks real quick, and Amy lists all the things that most TBI survivors know so well, including the notebooks to write everything down, the calendars to remember dates, tricks for navigating around aphasia, the feeling of absolutely knowing that you know the word or words you want to use, but the real mental impossibility that you're going to remember it before tomorrow afternoon, let alone in the moment when you want to use it. Um, Relying exclusively on the GPS on your phone for navigation. I use the Notes app on my phone to remember important information, and there are currently, if I'm not mistaken, about 180 notes in my Notes app. I use Google Maps to get everywhere, as well as the Compass app, the Reminders app, calculator, contacts, and the voice memos. Which reminds me, I have 7 voice notes I need to transcribe to the Notes app. As Amy says, where is it? Adapting to your new normal is incredibly frustrating, especially when the old you is so vivid in your long term memory. And I hope that I have established that short term memory, particularly, is in the top 3 challenges faced by almost every brain injury survivor. My pet theory is this is because memory is so tied to so many other experiences in our brains, including sensory, emotional, visual, and on, that memory is just going to be affected by everything. The last topic to touch on is Amy's chapter on depression and anxiety after a brain injury. I won't dwell on this one too long, but she sums it up with the sentence: "My depression and anxiety still affect me every day." Author's note: Amy sustained a concussion, which wouldn't seem like a brain injury in the tragic sense of the word. Um, but some days, she writes, I have bursts of anger, and others I'm extremely emotional, and I cry over almost anything, and I'm always anxious about everything. um, yeah, been there, lived there, doing that. And this is where, again, Amy and I trade pages out of each other's books. We see a therapist, and we reach out when we have to. And I think that, again, self advocacy, reaching out when you have to, talking to others about the things that you have to deal with. And if you're talking to patient people, kind people, understanding people, respectful people, people that don't think that you are making mountains out of molehills, and how can this brain injury affect him 16 years later, and on and on and on, all that bullshit. The people who don't think that neurofatigue and fatigue are really, issues that you really need to factor in when a TBI survivor, a brain injury survivor, knows that it's just something that you have to deal with every day. And if they don't want to understand it, or doubt it, or scoff at it, screw them. That's what I say. Um, it's a great book, Life with a Traumatic Brain Injury. And as I said, Amy, um, published 2 books, I believe. And honestly, on an aspirational note, it gives me it pumped a little juice into lit a fire under my ass, as it were, because it stemmed from a post that she put on Huffington Post, and I've got thousands of words of my experience with the GBI. So, uh, you know, uh, writing a book and getting my story out there isn't as daunting as I maybe thought it would be. Um, when it comes down to it, all I have is my perfectionism and this preconceived way I think that I need to do things, or I need to do something, or I want to do something. When really the only the ultimate purpose is to just get it out there. So I take my hat off to Amy for doing just that. So anyway, that is my book report on life with traumatic brain injury. I'm going to be putting a book report out sometime soon of the book The Accidental Buddhist. This is the book that will hopefully uh, hopefully it will convince people that are doubtful that they would be able to even consider meditation on a daily basis, and it just kind of turns that concept on its ear, because the writer Dinty Moore, I didn't make that up, is doubtful and kind of a scoffer going into the experiment of writing The Accidental Buddhist. And at the end of it, he is converted, I think, because he is very much what current wisdom would call a American Buddhist. And American Buddhists, a lot of them focus on meditation and Zen, the concepts of Zen, but also all of Buddhism, really, which is kind of the whole point. One of the old adages of Buddhism is, if you see the Buddha on the street, kill him, which is a hyperbolic way of saying you question everything. You decide if something is right or wrong for you. Anyway, I'm excited to do it. I've read the book, and I'm excited to move on from that book. So, anyway, buy Life with Traumatic Brain Injury. If nothing else, you will be contributing to the recovery financially of Amy Zellmer. And buy the book and give it to a brain injury survivor. Give it to a caregiver. Give it to anybody that you know whose life has been affected by brain injury. So, yeah. Thanks for joining me today, and keep your head about you.